Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the KnightTime podcast. I am your host, Dustin Hibbler. I am the Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions for Southwest Chicago Christian Schools. Thank you again for coming to our 6th episode. We're glad to have you. I am going to let our guest introduce himself.
Good morning. All right. My name is Jason Perry, Pastor Jason Perry. I am the campus pastor here at Chicago Christian High School. And that's who I am.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what else you want to know.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah, right. So I think the first thing I want to start off with, Jason, is so you were just telling me before we started recording that you're in your 60s, and obviously that means you have some life skills. So how did you get to CCHS now that you're working here as a 60-year-old?
So I'm not in my, I guess I am in my 60s, but I'm 60. Don't make me older than what I am. So, yeah, see, 60s, I could be 69. I'm 60. So anyhow, how did I get here? I got here, this is my 4th year at CCHS. And I got here, I think about 6 years ago. I started doing chapel. I was invited to do chapel. And then there were some issues going on at the school at that time that they called me back and said, hey, can you give us some consultation and help us deal with some of the issues specifically around race and some of the conflicts that were happening. And so I came in and talked with students and with teachers about that. And I got invited back for chapel again and again. And then the students asked me, great honor, to be the commencement speaker after my first year of doing chapel. And I did that. And then I believe one of the counselors was retiring, and they called me and asked me if I would take his place. And that was 4 years ago, and they haven't fired me yet.
Very cool. Yeah, and especially for somebody like me, I started here in June. Lots of new faces, obviously, for me, as we have new people coming in, but I didn't know how long you had worked here, and I didn't know your background. So this podcast for me is also an opportunity to get to know you better. Yeah. So how did you get involved exactly in ministry? Where did you go to college? Where did you go to seminary? That kind of thing.
Wow, yeah. So I went to college at University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, and I went into ministry really immediately out of college. I felt like I was in ministry before then, but I went into full-time ministry immediately, after graduating from college in 1982. I worked with the ministry called CRAFT, C-R-A-F-T, which stands for Center for Recreation and Family Training. And I did that for many years. And so I've been in full-time ministry since 1982. Yeah, that's what I say all the time. Every time I say it, it's like, wow, that's a long time. So yeah, I've been in full-time ministry since 1982. In 1990, I went to Trinity Evangelical Divinity School and spent 3.5 years there earning my MDiv. So that's my educational background. Yeah.
Great. So obviously, given that you're a reverend and that you've been discipling various communities, both of churches, and I've also heard extensive about your training of young men to be, Christian leaders. Yes. So where did you go after college? What churches did you operate out of? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I spent from the time I was 60 to the time from 16 to 40, I was at Pembroke Community Reformed Church. Yeah, so I was youth pastor, interim pastor, elder, Sunday school teacher, bus driver.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. It was a small congregation. We never got above 80, so I did a bunch of things for many, many years. And so I did that when I moved to Denver to become the National Director of Urban Ministries for an international leadership organization called Emerging Young Leaders. While I was there, I planted a church in Denver, Living Oaks Fellowship. And then about, what year was it? 2008, I think it was. Yes, 2008. I returned from Denver back to this area after my mom got sick. And so we decided to leave that church, turn that church over to the elders there. And I moved back here to help take care of my mom, who had Alzheimer's. And so since then, I've been working with Living Springs. I forgot the name there for a second. Sorry. Living Springs Community Church. I was the associate pastor of outreach and discipleship for several years, and now I serve alongside Dave Eisenbart as the co-pastor of Living Springs Community Church in Glenwood, Illinois.
Wow, so you've had quite the journey, and the best part too is you still have stuff to come. I'm excited to see where God keeps taking you, because that's one thing that I've learned. I'm 25, obviously you're 60. You could be my father.
Yeah,
we talked about that before the podcast as well. It's just really cool to see when you meet people in Christian spheres like CCHS. Chicago is a very big area. And so when we see how God brings people into this place, but also to other places, it's really cool to see. So with all that background in mind, you bring a lot of experience to your position here at CCHS. So let's transition from the past to the present here. So what is your position specifically at CCHS, and how do you engage in your role here at CCHS?
Yes, I was officially hired as counselor. So if you look on the door of my office, it just says Reverend Perry, counselor. And I am officially listed on the website and every place else as counselor. But what's fun about that for me, what's interesting about that for me, the very first day here, I came in for new staff training and all of that. And I'm sitting in the meeting with all of these teachers and knowing that I'm going to have a somewhat of a limited role. And I asked God, what am I doing here? Literally, I was standing outside and I said, Lord, what am I doing here? And I realized that day I had spent the whole day talking with teachers and praying with teachers. There were no students here. And I was talking with teachers and praying with teachers. And then the first day, as I stood right out there on the street, God said, this is your church.
Wow.
He said, this is your church. And so I changed my title to Campus Pastor. And that's how I see my role. I don't really have responsibilities with students in terms of their grades and getting them into college and things like that. But what I tell students and I tell faculty, matter of fact, I just sent out an email to faculty this morning encouraging them, saying that there are many things that get in the way of you doing what you do. Teachers are here to teach, students are here to learn, and there's a lot of things that get in the way that keep them from being their best version of themselves. That's my job. My job is to help them deal with those things that keep them from being the best version of themselves. My job all day is to walk around. I have the best job in the world. I walk around and love people all day long. That's all I do. And so it is so much fun for me. This is really I do a lot of things, even outside of here, but this is a highlight of my week. I love just being able to speak into the lives of students. I love being able to speak into the lives of teachers. I do that a lot. I go in the room. I know what's going on in their lives. I know when their parents are sick. I know when they're dealing with struggles at home, and I'm talking with students and teachers about that. I hang out in the halls, stop kids, what's going on? How are you doing? How can I help you? Email students, text students, and just find out what can I do to help you grow, and how can I help you get beyond those things that keep you from being who God wants you to be, and trying to get them to understand that this Christianity thing is not about a religion. It's not about you following rules. It's not about you passing tests. It is about you falling madly in love with Jesus. And what does that relationship look like on a practical, everyday, kicking it with God level? That's really how I see my job.
Very cool. Yeah, it's always great when you can meet people, and I've actually explained this to people when they ask me, well, what do you like about your job? And I say to people, I love working with people that are passionate and experts in their craft. When you can go to work and you can tell that the people that are in these different roles, because I'm not a athletic director, I'm not a counselor, my job is recruitment, and I use video and photo to enhance that, right? Proof that we're filming at school, by the way. The bell just went off.
There you go.
But I always tell people it's so exciting to see that passion come out.
Yeah.
And that's when you can have fun. That's when you can make an impact.
That's right.
And so to see that you're doing what you love in this place, and that I'm also getting to do that, it's a lot of fun to work with people and share that passion.
There's a scripture that says, I have no greater joy than to know that my children are walking in truth. That really kind of defines what I do. There is nothing better for me, nothing, than to see the lights come on in the kids' eyes. I think one of the greatest compliments I've ever received happened right where we're standing right now, maybe about 10 feet that way, where a student walked up to me after chapel. I wasn't working here at the time, but I had done chapel several times. And two seniors walked up to me and said, "You make me excited about walking with Jesus."
Wow.
I cannot think of any better compliment and affirmation that I could ever get than to have an 18-year-old say that I make them excited about walking with Jesus.
How cool.
Yeah.
I can't top that. I'm like racking my brain thinking, are there any moments that really stick out to me? But that's such a cool thing. And I've even heard people that have had maybe negative experiences in prior positions say, I'm really looking for words of affirmation, or I need to get an attaboy every now and again. Mm-hmm. And so to hear, before you were working here, a student, somebody who's probably not going to say much.
Right.
So when they do speak, we all listen very, very well. Right. To have them say that's incredible. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up our podcast here is 2020, just as a nutshell, has been such a crazy year. Between the spring, where we went fully remote, kind of out of the blue because of the coronavirus, to the summer of us preparing for this wacky 2020-2021 school year, to here we are now in September. We kind of have sports, we kind of don't. We don't have events, but we kind of, we're trying to keep the students engaged. We're wearing a mask in the hallways and in the classrooms. So in your role here as pastor, as you're coming along these kids, and they've probably got 10 times more things going on at home now. Maybe they live with an elderly grandparent, or they've just got a tumultuous home life because mom and dad are both working, and maybe they're doing remote learning. So that's a really, really big intro to this question. Yeah. But basically what I'm trying to ask is, what do things look like this year from being the pastor of a campus?
I think there are two things that come to mind. One of them is helping students deal with anxiety. That is a major, major issue. To be honest with you, when I came here 4 years ago, I had never seen a panic attack. I see them now. My first 3 years, I saw them regularly. And students are under tremendous pressure in terms of dealing with anxiety and fear and uncertainty and concerns. And so I spend a lot of time talking to students about how do you handle anxiety. And so one of, if you were filming in my office, you'd see on the whiteboard an illustration of something I talk to students a lot about, of breaking down Philippians 4, 6, and 7. Be anxious for nothing. Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. And learning how to pray, to give away your issues, and to trust God, and knowing that the result of that is peace and protection, that He will give us the result of us learning how to give our issues to God in prayer, and to literally give them and not to put them on a string and take them back, but learning how to do that. And knowing that the promised result will be, one, He will give us a peace that makes no sense in light of the circumstances. And two, that peace will protect our hearts and minds so that when the devil comes and tries to rob us and take away our joy, there is a divine sensory system that surrounds our heart and mind that he can't get to us. So I spend a lot of time talking students through that. The second thing that I do is teaching them how to, in a wise way, navigate choices. And what are the choices that you make? As I talked to some students recently, I said, there are 3 types of people in the world. Yeah, there are 3 types of people in the world: those who make things happen, those who those who watch things happen, and those who wonder what happened. And so, what kind of person are you going to be? And one of my best tools for counseling with students is something that I have been shocked to find that I have yet to see a student. I have yet to meet a student in 4 years that has ever heard of the Serenity Prayer. And so I put it on the wall in my office because it's become one of my number one tools of helping them think through when they're struggling with anxiety or decision making. What do you have control over? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so we just go through that process. What do you have control over? What don't you have control over? And then have enough sense to know, to courage, do what you can do, and trust God with those things you can't, and have enough sense to know how to make the difference. Those are the 2 areas. And as I look at all of the challenges that we face, and the frustrations and the fears and the doubts and the uncertainties, know what you control, know what you can't, learn how to give to God what you can't deal with, learn how to give all of it to God, but also understand the role that you play in your own mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Yeah, those are some, as Mike Drew would say, lofty things to ascribe to. But I can tell you from personal experience, that was basically my 4 years of college, was learning you can't control everything.
Yep.
Some things are out of your control for a reason.
Right.
Be at peace with the fact that God's got this.
Right.
And it takes time. And it's something that I think even adults would say, there are days where we do it better than others. And so, I'm 25 again, you're 60. We're still walking our faith journeys. We're in different places,
Yep.
obviously, because I don't have kids yet. I'm married now for 3 years, and I'm still learning those things now as a husband, as well as being a son and a brother. So it's fascinating how our faith journeys can really shape us and show us, hey, this person's going through that. Be a light for them.
Well, listen, I'm 60 and I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. It's just that when you're 10, you have problems. When you're 60, you have problems, but they're just exponentially larger.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it requires exponentially larger, more faith. So that's the only difference. We all have issues. Yeah. I deal with issues now. I'm dealing with stuff now where God is challenging me. Step up your faith. Mm-hmm. Step up your understanding. I'm dealing with staff issues, and I'm dealing with culture issues. Mm-hmm. Dealing with world issues and community issues that they're substantially larger than they were before, but the principles of dealing with them are exactly the same.
Sure.
And learning, okay, just step it up.
Right. The beauty of the Bible is it's a book that's old, but still has relevance today. And we look at the same verse that we looked at 10 years ago, and my goodness, it can be a completely different verse to us today than it was 10 years ago. I know that I have that constantly. Well, this was a lot of fun. I didn't know if I cut you off. If you had anything you wanted to add.
I was just going to say, when you just said about it's still relevant, it's relevant because it's alive.
Oh, yeah.
It's not dead.
Absolutely.
It's alive, which means that it adjusts, that it fits wherever we are, because it is it is the word of the living God, which means it is the living word of a living God.
Right.
And therefore it speaks perfectly to wherever we are and whatever we do. That's why it's always relevant.
Jason Perry, everybody.
Well,
thank you for joining us.
Yes.
We very much appreciate it. So let's sum up for the audience here. So we talked about your background, where you grew up, where you went to college, where you went and got your MDiv. We then talked about kind of what led you to CCHS. Yes. And the part of the conversation that I thoroughly enjoyed, I hope that people did as well, is what you're doing here this year. You talked to us about the anxiety. We talked about, when you got here and you stood outside, you said, okay, God, what am I doing here? And you went, that's what I'm doing here.
Right.
Which, that's awesome hearing that. So that was our 6th episode. I'm going to leave you guys hanging, though. I'm not going to give you any hints. Usually at the end of every episode, I give a preview of the next one. I'm just going to have it be a surprise. We got to give our audience some drama here. We'll let the bell go. And I think that wraps up our 6th episode. So again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on the KnightTime podcast.